As investors and developers, we see the world differently. This podcast uncovers the untold truths of what it really takes to become a multi-million dollar residential developer. I'm Nathan Battershall. Let's get to work. Welcome to the Residential Developer Podcast. I'm the host of this show. My name's Nathan Battershall, and I'm really privileged today to have a special guest on with us, Quoc Duong. Welcome to the show, mate.
Thank you so much, Nathan. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, good to have you. And for those who don't know, Quoc is the managing director of formerly Duo Tax, but now called Duo Group.
Yep.
And we're going to be talking about all things quantity surveying today. Yep. So it's so good to have you on the show, mate.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And I guess what really led me to, first and foremost, Quoc and his team have been our quantity surveyors for a while now, a couple of years, and they do such an incredible job. And I thought we're in such a climate, really since COVID, it's been a really tricky climate around construction, and all of our clients are investors and developers. And the amount of conversations I have with people just around the uncertainty around build costs, around estimating, around budget blowouts. Some of our clients are builders, but a lot of them aren't. So I guess I'd just love to have a really good conversation with you.
Yeah, well, it's been like that since COVID, hasn't it? It's ever since COVID. You know, your material prices have gone up, your labour costs have gone up. It's crazy, and everyone was sort of waiting for it to come down slowly, but hasn't really gone down, has it? It's sort of just held.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? Like I get some people say to me, "Oh, look, I'm going to start the project when the costs go down." I'm like, this is the new normal now. Like, it's not going down. Like that's my thoughts. This is the new norm.
Yeah. Well, I had a client in where was it? It was out west near Leppington area, building a warehouse, and just when COVID happened, he said that he wanted to wait a little while until the material prices would come down and the labor costs would come down. 2 years later, he's like, "Nah, I'm just going to start it now."
Yeah.
And it's probably gone up by, 40, 50% by then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it is important just to be really realistic on that, isn't it?
Yeah. That's right.
I've found often we're getting people that haven't been concerned when they've gone and bought a property or a site to do a development. They've based all of their numbers on this unrealistic best case scenario. So what happens then? Everyone feels their pressure. So the builder, the architect, the planner, the QS, like everyone on the team feels their pressure because they're trying to build something for a price that's just not achievable because the numbers don't stack up.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, right now, because the margins are so much lower, you've really got to take the right steps to have a successful project in the end, a successful development. You need the right team around you. You need the right architects, the right designers, right, quantity surveyors, and even like your finance team, marketing team as well.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, 100%. And I think, look, for me, I'm really excited to have you guys on the show because it's just, for me, it's having a good QS is so valuable. And I guess just to really kick us off, you guys are really present, I find, on socials. You're present in the market. A lot of people know about who you are, especially in New South Wales. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about the Duo Group? I know you guys have a couple of key things you specialise in. Just obviously for today, we're talking about quantity surveying, but I think it's still important for our listeners to understand what you guys do around, especially tax and tax depreciation, just to give us a bit of an oversight of what your role is, a little bit about your company.
Of course, yes. So my brother and I started the company up about 9 years ago. It was my brother's idea to become a quantity surveyor in the first place. But we started off doing tax depreciation only. So he came from a background of civil engineering. I was always in quantity surveying and estimating. And, one day he decided, he had an investment property and he needed a depreciation schedule. And he went off, got his depreciation schedule, and he's like, who produces this report? Then apparently it was a quantity surveyor, which, is something that we could do. And then he decided to start the business, and then I helped him out. 4 or 5 years on later, well, that was in my mum's garage. 4 or 5 years on later, we're in an office now. There's about 40, 50 of us in the team. And we decided to open up a traditional quantity surveying arm that does, your tendering, your estimates for councils, banks, all that kind of stuff. For insurance as well, in case if your house burns down, you want to work out how much does it cost to replace this building. We do all that kind of stuff. But yeah, we start off doing tax depreciation first. That's how it all started. And then, and then now we have a property valuation department. We have a insurance arm as well. So yeah, there's about 4 departments, and in the 4 departments, there's probably 40, 50 staff now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty significant. Yeah, massive,
Yeah.
massive. And look, I think there's multiple podcast episodes on each of those elements.
That's right. Yeah.
Good to get you guys back on to talk about tax depreciation, because obviously in this game, as investors and property developers, the idea is long term to hold the stock. Obviously, to hold some stock and as for rental income. So it's so invaluable. Like we talk a lot about.
It's a whole topic on its own, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
We could speak about it for hours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it'd be great to get you guys back on where we can really drill down into that side of things, because I think I talk a lot about having a dream team. Like any successful developer needs to develop a dream team, like people they can really lean on to provide good sound advice. And for me, I've never seen a time more critical than now, personally, to have a good QS. Have you found that since COVID that people are valuing that service a lot more?
110%. I'll give you even a case study that happened just only yesterday. I had a client that came to me. It was for an initial cost report, which is for bank funding.
Yep.
They came to me very early on during the design phase, asking me questions. Hey, how much is it going to cost for this? How many dollars per square meter? Blah blah blah. They didn't dive deep into the details, the ambiguities of construction budgeting.
Yes.
And then skip 4, 5, 6 months later, they came to me for the initial cost report for the bank. I said, okay, no problems. I can help you prepare that report. I ended up going through the estimate. And it ended up being, I think their budget was about 1.4, and I priced it. It was close towards 2.2 mil.
Yeah.
And then fortunately they didn't go ahead with the construction because it was a lot higher than they expected. But I did recommend them to get the detailed report early on during the cost planning stage, the bill of quantities, so we can cover all the ambiguities of the construction budgeting. You have your things that people don't really see, your authority fees, or your all these things that they don't see. And we, as quantity surveyors experts, when we look at the drawings, we go, okay, well, you need this report, you need this, you need to engage this consultant. You haven't got this, you haven't allowed this. So having us early on, you can really make sure that you cover all aspects and components of your project.
Yeah, definitely. And it's even things like subdivision, like the amount of people that don't factor in subdivision. Like obviously, all of our listeners generally are either doing developments or they're looking to do a development. So subdivision can add up. The cost of a Torrens title versus a strata, like it can.
Yeah, that's right.
Differences.
There's so many things that can affect your development.
Yeah. Even one thing I've found, I don't know if you've seen this, but one thing a lot of people are missing, like there's this the state contribution. Like you've obviously got your council contribution, but then now there's this new state contribution that's come in around Sydney or some of the outlying areas like Newcastle, Central Coast, Wollongong, Shell Harbour, Shoalhaven Council. Yeah. Like that extra state contribution too. And, it adds up like an extra $8,000 per dwelling. It can add up on your feasibility.
That's right. Yeah.
And chew into your margin.
It's all those small things really, make a massive difference, because your margins are so small already now compared to what it was, 10 years ago. Yeah,
definitely. So I guess traditionally, a lot of people, I don't know if you've found this, but in the past, a lot of people would try and fudge their numbers. For example, lodging a DA.
Yeah.
They'd try and bring that QS down to save a little bit of money on DA fees. But, if you're going to get a QS, you might as well get an accurate QS, wouldn't you believe?
That's right. Well, I agree. Well, typically what happens is with those guys there, when they come to us to prepare the council cost reports, they're always trying to get us to, you know, reduce the numbers as far down as possible. And sometimes you're just going to have to be honest with them. You just tell them, well, look, based on the Australian Cost Guide Index, you have this here as the minimum, and here is the maximum amount. You know what I mean?
That's it.
And if you go anything under this here, they're going to flag that amount.
Yeah, and councils are getting smarter, aren't they, on it? Like,
everyone is.
They're coming back if the numbers are unrealistic.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
You know, if it's a $1.6 million duplex and they've put 950 or whatever, like, you know, most of the time they're going to come back.
There's still guys coming to me trying to get me to put on the report 700, 800K to build a duplex. And
tell me who can build one for that price now in this climate.
Well, maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And look, in terms of because I think it's important to educate people, I guess, around some of the things a QS is doing and different stages of a project. Do you want to just go into a little bit more detail? Like, for example, I'm seeing a lot more banks now needing that detailed QS. Yeah. But we're also educating a lot more architects, building designers, design professionals around getting a QS early, once the client's approved, for example. What we quite often do, we encourage clients to do now is let's get a QS early in the piece. Yeah, like once they've approved the concept design, before we get all the consultants and go too far, to make sure that we're not getting those stories where it's a 1.4 budget but it's come out at 2.2.
Exactly. Look, if you think about it, if you're building a project that's, you know, $3, $4, $5 million a development, and you're spending $10,000 on a QS report max. That's all the reports combined. Typically, it's, you know, anywhere between $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. But let's just say $10,000 combined. If you think about it, you're saving yourself so much, like the risk of going into development with so many things that you don't see yourself. You know what I mean? As a developer or a mum or dad building a duplex, you know, it's their first duplex. Yeah. You spend that little bit of money, it saves you a lot of hassle, you know, in the long run.
That's it. Well, I think you nailed it there. Like if you're spending that money, but if you have to go back and redesign everything,
that's right. Exactly.
You can times that number by 5, and that's what you're paying then for all the rework.
Exactly. We offer multiple types of reports. But for the construction estimates, we have 3 different types of reports. We have first our preliminary estimate, which is typically when you're in your concept stage. Yes. It's just a trade summary. We'll look at your concept drawings. We'll go, okay, we'll look, do a quick measurement. We'll work it out. We'll go, okay, we'll break it down into one line item. Yeah. Excavation was going to be 200K. Concreting's 300K, whatever it is. Yeah. And then we have our detailed report where typically that's for, you know, when you have your structural drawings, your architectural stamp drawings as well.
So is that generally, would you say that stage is generally when it's prior to lodging for CC or CDC?
Yeah, so I'd say post DA or CDC towards CC. Yeah.
Got a lot more documentation.
A lot more documents, that's right. And we'll break it down into a few line items. We'll go, okay, how many tonnage of steel reinforcement? How many cubic meters of concrete? We count all the taps, all the doors, how many square meters of tiling. Yeah. We'll specify what type of tiling it is. Yes. Everything's broken down for you to see. Yeah. And then you can go, all right, well, look, I don't want this. Okay, this is too expensive. I want this tiling. I want this joinery. You know, I'd like a nicer spec on the taps. So it gives you that opportunity to fine-tune your project budget.
Just drill down a little bit more.
Exactly, that's right. And then later on, when you're closer towards construction, we also prepare a report that's a forensic report, and that's typically for builders, I would say. Yeah. So let's just say, let's use painting as an example. Okay, how many buckets of paint? We'll break it down to how many buckets of paint, how many brushes, how many rollers. Yeah. Okay, how many labourers on site, ITPs. Yeah. You know what I mean? It really gives the builder the chance to, you know, for example, is your painter, is he watering down the paint? You know what I mean? So you know exactly how many buckets of paint per square meter.
Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah.
I love what you said there, and I'd love to go back a step, talk about the preliminary side.
Yeah,
because this is where I'm seeing just a lot of uncertainty. So a lot of investors and developers out there, you've got a mixture of different people. So people starting with a duplex or a dual occupancy, and then obviously working up to multi-dwelling. I guess that's the space I really want to speak into is like your smaller projects, so duplex, dual occupancy, townhouse type developments, multi-dwelling. Sometimes I've seen people think, oh, you don't need that. Or their mentality, like, there's a mentality of just that the project guys will do this. But I think, there's a lot of people out there wanting to do projects in like infill projects in nicer areas or areas where, that can be quite profitable even just doing a duplex or a dual lock.
Yep.
So it's really just getting people to understand the power and the importance of like a preliminary QS, because I just think you nailed something there. And in terms of that, like, are you at that stage? Are you generally obviously you tend not to have a lot of detail like structurals or that sort of thing. Are you generally trying to make sure you're putting fat and contingency into the QS just to make sure you'd rather like a higher estimate rather than a lower estimate?
Well, look, we try to get as accurate as possible. We're not trying to go higher or go under. We're trying to get as accurate as possible for the client. So, for example, if you'd get this a lot, Nathan. A client comes to you, they go, oh, I want to build this duplex or this house here. And then you'll quickly draw up a sketch, and they'll send it over to me, and they'll ask, hey, can you prepare a cost report? And I'll tell them, look, at this stage here, you're only going to need a preliminary report.
Yes.
And then when I'm preparing the preliminary report, I'll look at multiple things. Okay, I'll look at the site. I'll look at go through a street view. Sometimes in the drawings it doesn't specify if you need stumps or not. Then I'll tell the client, look, based on this location here, the houses around or whatever it is, every house is on stumps, so you'd probably need stumps or whatever it is. Yeah. And then I'll make an allowance for that or anything like that, Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And I think because I've never seen more than like the last probably 4 or 5 years, I'm seeing more and more costs blowing out. But I think that for me, one of the most vital pieces in dealing with this, especially around developments and investments, is QS, is getting estimates, like those preliminary estimates, because at the end of the day, it's a lot cheaper to make the tough decision to shrink a design or to bring it back within budget, than to go all that way through and then have to reverse it all again.
Yeah, and all it costs you is anywhere between $600 to $1,000, for a preliminary estimate.
Yeah,
it will take us a day, 2 days tops to get through that as well.
Yeah.
And instead of waiting, getting to the end, getting all these other consultants involved, and then everyone has to scratch all their drawings, and they can go back to the start again.
Yeah, that's it. And I think for me that's a big key thing, because I think really development is very much about hitting a number, and it's reverse engineering and so that's really good. So in terms of a preliminary estimate, even just for investors and developers and people that are listening, like what level of detail do you generally need? Like in terms of like just someone who's really felt the pain the last couple of years with their projects of not following that step. And my thoughts are, I'd say it's probably 70% of developers and investors haven't taken that step. I guess my dream is that 100% of investors would really value getting estimates early in the piece.
Yeah.
What would, let's just talk a duplex, for example. What's a typical level of detail that you generally need?
Yeah, look, sometimes I even have people coming to me with a set of drawings from real estate, as funny as it is, from realestate.com. They'll come to me, they'll send me the link. Hey, I want to build this house. How much is it going to cost me to build? Yeah. And I do a quick, cost per square meter and send it off to them. Yeah. But look, the more detail there is, the more accurate the report will be. Yeah. But look, anything that's, just a standard architectural set of drawings, basic one, that'll do.
Yeah. So generally at a preliminary stage, I guess, a good accurate set of floor plans, elevations, maybe a section.
Yeah.
And obviously a bit of an idea of what sort of flooring, whether it's concrete, like you said.
That's right.
Harris and joists.
Yeah.
It all helps, doesn't it?
That's right. Yeah, for sure. And look, the more detail you have in the drawings, the more accurate it'll be. Sometimes we even offer value engineering services as well. So, for example, we had a project where we're building these apartments. They were building these apartments, and we have a team that do all the value engineering in Duo QS as well. And what happened was there was a project where it was over engineered, and projects will always be over engineered for the safety of the consultant. That's right. So we were saying, look, instead of a I can't remember what it was, but a 300 millimeter slab or whatever, you can use a 250. And then they went back and forth, and in the end, they shaved off a lot of money on their project there.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, and we were talking about close to I think it was close to 10% on the development.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which is a huge saving.
Yeah.
So you guys can offer that type of service where essentially a developer or an investor can bring their documentation to you, and you can really value engineer it and look at areas where
that's right.
It's been overcooked or
well, look, it's not. It hasn't always been our bread and butter, but there was a it's we've had clients that we've been helping over the years on their developments, and they've came to us and they've asked for some advice, and that's how it all started, to be honest.
Yeah. Which is massive because, sometimes shaving 30 or 40K off a duplex is the difference between it hitting a number that makes it profitable and not.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Looking, and I guess just digging a little bit more into that preliminary side of things. A lot of people in the industry talk about different specs of build, and I thought maybe you could speak into that because obviously different areas require different spec.
Yeah,
there's areas you can go luxury in a development. There's areas where you can go maybe just a nice higher quality spec. Then there's areas you just got to go mid spec. But then there's areas which a lot of us try to avoid. But you can still make money in those areas. Then you got the areas where you just got to go complete project spec.
Yeah, that's right.
I guess from your side of the fence, are you able to speak into the different specs that when people talk about a different spec, are you able to just educate people around what that means, in terms of a spec of a build? Yeah,
of course. I think it's it really depends on your position. If you're building as a homeowner, as a person that's going to live in the property, the house, then it's a whole different perspective than a investor, right? Someone that's going to rent it out or wants to flip the house. Or sometimes even if you flip the house, you want to, and you're building at a higher spec, you're gonna make, you can sell it for more. But it really depends on the position. If you're gonna rent it out or you're actually gonna live in it.
Yeah.
Let's just say I've got lots of clients that build small houses towards offshore area.
Yeah.
They build typically low end.
That's project spec, is it?
Project spec.
Yeah.
They don't option anything in their house.
Yeah.
They get their own mates that do the air cons, the concreting, and the electricals themselves. For a lot cheaper. So that's out west. They do that. They build at a very lower spec.
Yeah, and that'd be more. Would that be more?
Yeah,
I guess you'd say the volume type builder.
Volume type builders. That's right. You don't want to over capitalize on those kind of properties there.
Yeah.
If you're moving towards inner west suburbs where they're doing duplexes there.
Yeah.
Typically you see full brick, suspended slab. Yeah. Whereas in an area like Canley Heights, Cabramatta, it's typically a suspended timber flooring system.
Just lightweight
Brick veneer. Yeah.
And that's the key, isn't it? Really, just knowing the area.
You have to know the area. That's right. You do have to do your research. You have to understand the area.
Yeah. And I have had that where clients have come to us and from a particular area. Yeah. I remember we had a client from the just like that, a particular area like in Bankstown Council area where pretty much it's expected to have suspended slab.
Yeah.
Everyone wants suspended slab. But then they wanted to do a project in in a part of Wollongong, but it's not expected there to have suspended slab. So they were going to do that, but I just was able to say to them, hey, you could do it, but the reality is but the market doesn't need it.
That's right.
And you're only going to overcapitalize on your project.
Exactly. Where are most of your projects based, Nathan?
Look, so we've got offices on the south coast of New South Wales, so Kiama.
Yeah.
office in Sydney and an office in
I know
Newcastle.
I did a few out that way. Yeah.
Yeah, so we sort of cover that whole east coast, of Australia, really. Anywhere New South Wales, really. At the moment, we're only New South Wales.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, but it's interesting. Like you can even just go from one suburb to the next, can't you? Really, and and the spec of what the market expects changes
is completely different. That's right.
Yeah. And I guess when you're doing, I guess the reason I ask about the different specs of build, obviously that's something that the developer and investor needs to do their own education and research on. But I guess in terms, it's pretty important for you to know that though, isn't it? When you're doing that preliminary estimate, I guess it's important to know what level of spec.
Of course. That's right. We definitely do need to know, what is this going to be a double brick? Is this going to be a brick veneer? Are you going to go lightweight construction? Are you going to go suspended slab? And even the level of in the finishes as well.
So when you look at the specs, and I'm sort of honing in on this because we deal with potentially a couple of hundred investors and developers per year. So I hear a lot of these same conversations. A lot of people often don't know what the difference is between the specs. Like, are you able to just give us a bit just your thoughts around like what pushes something into how do you when you look at the different specs, how many specs do you tend to look at it through the lens of, and what pushes it sort of into those categories?
Yeah, of course. Like if you're talking about project home level developments, you're talking about sub 2K. So anything that's below $2,000 per square meter. Anything that's a medium build, you're looking around the 2.5. And then your high end, obviously, you're going, $4,000 or $5,000 per square meter plus. And then but then at high ends, sometimes I have clients coming to me and they're saying, "Oh, I want to build something that's a high end finish. Can you give me a cost per square meter on this house here?" And then I also have to ask them, what area are you building in? Then I have to do my research. Is it going to be in Vaucluse, or you're building in, for example, Balmain? This, even though they're both high end, one's at $8,000 per square meter, and the other one's at $12,000 per square meter.
It's so true, isn't it? Every area is so specific.
That's right.
And I guess that's probably a tricky part too, because I find a lot of builders struggle because the client wants, what's the square meter rate? But it's not just about the square meter rate, is it? Like a lot of people say, I need to build this for 3,000 a square meter or 3.5 or whatever the number is. It's deeper than just the square meter rate.
That's right,
isn't it?
Definitely. Even if you're building like a project home these days, if you look at the cost per square meter on a project home, I think they're building a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom. That's I think 150 square meters for $250K out west. In those subdivision areas like Leppington, Oshawa. If you go to the Australian Cost Index, there's nothing that
nothing that sits anywhere near there.
That's right. And so it really depends on the area, and it depends on the company that you're building through as well. The reason why they can build for so cheap is because they're building hundreds of homes in an area. All the trucks are on site, all their laborers are on the same site. All the project managers are managing 10 houses down the street as well at the same time.
And it's tricky too, isn't it? Because I've had to educate a lot of investors in various things, because quite often they'll see an ad on Instagram or Facebook where but I saw that ad that said you could build this 5-bedroom duplex for $800,000. But like, that's what they're advertising it for.
That's right.
Like by the time you add all of the upgrades and all the extra costs, all the things that haven't been factored in or in the fine print, not including site costs and all the different things.
I think they exclude things like your air conditioning, your concreting to around the house, your driveway's not even included as well. Electrical, so your light fittings, I'm pretty sure that's an option as well.
And the variations are expensive, aren't they?
That's right.
Quite often, once you even like a light fitting, a downlight variation is so expensive.
Exactly. And then even like then when you get to your plant equipment items, like your ovens, cooktops, they're all the basic ones that they start you off on. the
that
absolute
no
base.
one wants.
Yeah, that's right. Everyone ends up
Yeah.
upgrading them unless you're a investor.
Yeah.
And you're going to rent it out. You end up just
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it. And then you got things like peering or different site costs that can blow out.
variations. Yeah,
yeah.
that's right. Yeah,
And the variations are generally not the going rate.
yeah,
If like the variation's always inflated because obviously that's where
that's right.
that I guess that market makes their margin, isn't it?
That's
They're
right.
running on lower margins. Would that be right?
Exactly. They're running on lower margins and they're building in volume. But as soon as they hit you with a variation, they can make their money their money on that very easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And look, I guess a lot of the listeners we're trying to educate, really, it's a lot of infill, people wanting to do, I guess, nicer projects.
Yep.
That can be that are very profitable, and so I guess it's it's trying to get people to understand that, hey, that project market or the low spec market doesn't work in a lot of infill areas. So it's sort of educating people around that mid spec or that that nicer spec
Yeah.
type of project.
I get with the preliminary reports, like you mentioned before, getting that early on in your project is very beneficial. It really helps you cut out so many ambiguities, things that you're not unforeseen circumstances that can occur later on in the project as well.
Yeah.
You can sort of sometimes I get a set of drawings from clients and they go, okay, these are the specifications. It's going to be a double brick, suspended concrete slab. And then you look at the area as a quantity surveyor, they're asking for a preliminary report. You sort of have to make a judgment on yourself to determine, what the level of finishes are going to be on the interior. So, for example, your taps, your doors, your lights, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We have to sort of make that guesstimate ourselves there. Because
you don't have the data.
We don't have the specifications yet at that point, and then later on, you can chop and change those items there at a detailed cost report level.
Yes, yeah. I love that. So when you're looking at that, are you generally just doing a little bit of a high level bit of research into that area? So
yeah,
like you said, if it's in Vaucluse, well, straight away it's not going to be like
$6,000. Yeah, $6,000 per square meter. That's going to be typically anywhere 8, 9, 10K plus.
Yeah. That I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me that it's just so vital. I've just never seen it so vital to get that preliminary estimate at that point. Do you what are some of the things? What are some of the areas the last couple of years that you're seeing people blowing out their budget? Like, is that? Let's just talk duplexes in, sort of mid spec, high spec type areas. Like we're talking like 3,000, 3,500, 4,500 a square meter type areas, so to speak. What are some key areas where you're finding that people just haven't factored in? Into their costing, where they're blowing out a bit.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of your fees, your local authority fees, all that kind of stuff. People don't take that into account. As a quantity surveyor, we look at a set of drawings, we go, okay, well, there's for example, we look at the site. It's this is a simple one, but there's all these trees on the site. Have you made an allowance for that? The tree removal costs, and a lot of the times there, people don't actually account for that yet. Funny as it is, they don't think about these things. All these small little costs, these items here that are hidden.
That's great.
Yeah.
So that's sort of really going into that feasibility stage, isn't it? Before they bought the site.
And that's right. And
factor those things in.
Exactly. And I think the most important thing as a developer is that you need the right team around you. And like you said before, having that dream team, having a architect that you can trust, having that quantity surveyor you can trust. Your all your consultants, your certifiers.
No, you're right. And do you guys ever get involved in anything from a selecting a site perspective, like where a developer might say, look, obviously they might have a town planner, an architect as well involved in the designer involved in the conversation, but do you guys ever sort of get anyone come to you at that stage and say, hey, is there anything in this site that you think is going to sort of go above the usual costings, for example, excavation or, like you said, trees, tree removal and extra things? Like, is that something you guys do, or there's generally not?
There's a lot of things that a lot of clients, they come to us at the preliminary level, a preliminary cost report stage, or even earlier than that, where they present to us a project and they ask us, how much do you think this is going to cost? And I'll tell them, look, based on the floor area that you're suggesting, it's going to cost you X dollars per square meter. So let's just say 5 million. Yeah. But there's a lot of things that you haven't accounted for yet. So for example, site access. Yeah. Site access is a massive thing. That could make your project blow out of budget very easily as well. Yeah. And then
so do you want to just? That's a really good point, I think, because I've seen that before where people haven't factored that in. Can you give us a bit of an idea of what? Yeah. Some scenarios like what? Yeah. Like what are we looking for? Yes. At a feasibility point.
Yeah. So for example, like this building here, it's based in basically the center of North Sydney. Yes. And let's just say if they wanted to knock this building down or do some kind of refurb, whatever it is, are you going to be able to fit a truck through here? Yeah. You're not going to be able to do that. Yeah. So you're going to have to find alternative solutions. Yes. And a lot of it's going to be like, even if it has to come down to, how many guys, wheelbarrows, buckets, carrying the excess from on site out to the street, dump it onto the truck. Yeah. All those costs there, that could blow out a budget very easily. Yeah.
I'm guessing traffic control and things can be a killer too.
That's right.
You've got to shut down the street. Yeah. So I guess if someone's looking at a development site, the potential of a development site, essentially they can engage a QS to pay them a fee to actually have a high level look and say, is there any anomalies above and beyond the usual that you think we should factor in here?
Yeah.
That's something that,
of course, definitely.
A good QS is able to speak into.
We had a project recently where it was a boarding house towards the Liverpool area, and one of the builder came up to us and he asked us, can you price this project up for him? So we did. We priced everything up. It was at a very early preliminary stage. Yeah. And I also raised some concerns like, site access was one. And this boarding house was actually sort of just like right next to the river. So what happened was the architect in the design, they drew the boundary, so the fencing right up against the boundary of the river. Yeah. And that part there was, I think, part of Sydney Water. So, you have to get consent from them as well, and that's going to cause problems as well. So there was a problem. Yeah, and there was problems in the actual design there. So we suggested you're going to have to make some changes here because you're actually not going to be building up to this point here. Yes. Your boundary is actually probably 2 meters behind that.
Yep. Yeah. So that, I guess that goes back to really, if you're able to speak into that project at a preliminary stage, you can address that. Then the architect or the designer can then look to redesign it a little bit more, which is obviously going to save costs, going to save time.
Exactly.
Not having to deal with Sydney Water. Yeah. Rather than having to do a redesign with council.
Yeah. Well, in the end, I don't think the builder even took on the job anymore because he was just thinking, like, this. Well, no one else wanted to take it on. He came to me. Lucky he came to me.
Yeah. So I guess the real lesson in that, if you are, is the power of actually, if you'd been involved in that project with the architect early in the piece, you would have picked that up and just architect could have actually changed the design and
that's right.
Had a builder that would want to build it.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
That's great. That's great. And in terms of, have you got any insights just from the last few years of some things I guess you can give, some tips you can give developers in regards to, engagement, like involvement, like what are some tips and some advantages of I guess your engagement at those different stages? Like let's just speak duplex, townhouse, smaller residential developments. Like what are some thoughts
I think one of
developers.
I think one of the biggest problems I've seen in specifically owner builders. Owner builders, they go and get funding from the banks,
Yes.
and the bank approve their loan.
Yeah.
What they don't realize is that yes, the bank has approved your loan, but it doesn't mean that they'll give you the money up front to build your project.
Yeah.
So what happens is you actually need to have that money already. You need to start doing the works.
Yeah.
Once you're ready to lodge an invoice,
Yeah.
let's just say you've poured the slab,
Yes.
then you have to get the quantity survey out on site and assess, yes, the slab's been poured. Then the bank will pay you for that 100K for that slab.
Yeah.
But typically what people expect is that the bank will then give them money on deposits or whatever it is to build their project.
Yeah.
You know, you sort of need to have that money already up front for the first stage,
Yeah.
and then the bank pays you out for that first part. Then it's sort of just to help you with your cash flow.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and that's a common one, isn't it? And then all
Yeah.
of a sudden, if that's been something that's been neglected or hasn't been addressed,
Yeah.
all of a sudden you've got a stressed out investor.
That's right. Yeah. And the project, it falls.
The project
Yeah.
falls over.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes I wonder if that's why we're seeing a lot of sites being sold with a DA or a CDC approval on them,
Yeah.
purely because someone couldn't get the funding.
Yeah, that's right. And generally what happens is to be able to get funding as well, your project does need to be within 5% difference of, what happens is when you go and get a construction loan, the bank will say, okay, well, you need a quantity surveyor to verify and substantiate the cost of construction.
Yes.
So let's just say your contract is at $1 million.
Yeah.
Okay, so I then get all your architectural drawings, I get all your structural drawings, import it into my software,
Yep.
and then I start crunching the numbers, measuring everything up.
Yep.
Ultimately, the general rule of thumb is my cost estimate needs to be within 5% of the construction cost. If I'm outside that 5%, let's just say I sit at 1.5 mil,
Yes.
the bank's going to raise red flags, going to say, okay, no, we're not funding this project. The QS is saying it's too much, it's too high or it's too low, whatever it is.
Yeah.
The general rule of thumb is we need to be within 5% difference.
Yeah.
That's something that not a lot of people understand. They think, the QS is going to be, here they're going to say, all right, my project's $1 million. The QS is going to say it's $1 million. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
We need to be able to come up with a realistic figure. We will always want to help the client as best as we can.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we need to be able to protect their investment, their money. What if they go out and they, end up building the project, they spend $1 million and they're only, 2/3 of the way finish,
Yeah. No one wins.
no one wins.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess in terms of your company and your business and your profession,
Yeah.
really, like working with investors and developers, you want a client you can work with for life.
That's
don't you?
right. Exactly. We're not here to, give you guys a hard time.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're trying to protect your investment.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And I always say, our job's to make sure our clients create a successful project, but also a profitable project.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
And that's where good QS, I think,
Yeah.
is terrific. Because for me, sometimes I find in the industry there's this sort of using a QS to tick a box, and I think we need to debunk that. I think we need to get away from that. Yes, you got to tick a box for the banks. You got to tick a box for a QS for council, but I think it's got to be about creating estimates so that the project is well managed and it's well documented to ensure that it is financial and that it is sustainable and that the development is feasible.
Yeah. That's right.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's right. Everyone thinks a QS is here just to tick boxes to,
yeah,
and then get that's it. But like you've been saying, or meeting is that, like you've been saying, it's important to get the QS very early on in the stage. Not right at the end when you're asking them to tick the boxes. If you get them engaged early on in the project in the preliminary stage, you can make those adjustments, and then you move on to the detailed report, onto your forensic report. Then you go to whatever it is to the bank. You'll be ready. You know exactly how much it's going to cost to build. And at that point there, we're ready to tick all the boxes.
Yeah, I love it. That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And one thing I find that blows budgets out often is site costs. Because obviously the reality is there's a lot of areas where you're dealing with sloping sites, you're dealing with constraints. I guess that's. Are you finding often that's where people have really blown out their costs? They haven't factored in the excavation, or they haven't factored in the fact that it's not just the cutting of the site or the
Edge
excavation
beams.
of the site. Yeah,
Yeah.
Like, what are some of your thoughts just around some of those key things where people don't factor in? They literally just work off 3,500 or 3,000 or 4,000 a square meter, but haven't factored in those key elements.
That is a massive problem as well. Yeah. So a lot of the times they find a site, they get the architect to draw on it, and then they come to us, and it ends up being a lot more expensive than they expect. Is because of this, your site's on a slope, site accessibility, all these kind of things they do factor in. That's right.
Yeah, that's it. And then I guess you've got the type of earth you're excavating, isn't it?
That's right.
Like I've got a development at the moment I'm kicking off in a year or two that is on blue metal, bluestone.
Yeah.
So that's that's another level.
That's right.
But luckily we knew that before we got the site. We factored in.
That's another massive problem is the below ground excavation. Yeah.
And it can be tricky, I guess, can't it? If someone's they're purely looking for their next development site. Without getting geotech and getting some of that data, it is tricky to tell, isn't it? But I guess are you encouraging developers and investors to probably, really go off the worst case rather than the best case?
Well, look, it depends, because ultimately my job here is to estimate, not guesstimate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if I'm put into a position where I have to guesstimate, then yes, I will make an allowance for the worst possible scenario.
Yeah, that's it.
You're going to be hitting rock.
Yeah.
And look, I'm not going to get silly with it. If it's in a specific area, then where there's no rock, if you're just building like a basic cookie cutter house, and then I won't make that kind of allowance. But that's right. My job here is to estimate, not guesstimate. Yeah. And if I do have to guesstimate, then yes, I will make an over allowance on some certain things just in case.
I love that.
Yeah.
One thing I'm seeing a lot of is a lot of people wanting to do basements, for example, with duplexes.
Yeah.
Which is a great opportunity. It's a great alternative. You can create extra space, and there's some really good ways under the CDC, especially you can get quite a large, bigger than a standard garage size. But I guess a lot of it does come down to locations, areas. Some areas I believe you overcapitalise in. But what are some of the areas, just for people that are looking to do a basement in, say, a nicer area where you can justify it from a feasibility perspective? What are some areas that you think, what are some of the key areas that really make a basement obviously quite a lot more expensive than, say, your above ground costs that people don't think about sometimes?
As in costs, well, look, it's it's the things that are below ground that you don't see, and it depends on the site as well. If you're digging a basement and you're in between two buildings, you got to make sure that there's all the retaining walls, there's structural integrity to hold up those two buildings on either side. People don't think about these things, and the cost to do that is so significant, because then you have to do things in so much more detail. Everything's a lot more fragile, it's and it requires a lot more engineering than what you than building a basement in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. That's it. And I guess some areas you got a sheet pile.
Yeah, that's right.
That people may not have factored in.
Yeah.
And even, have you even found the excavation costs? Like, not just the excavation, but then where do you take it? But the material, but then where do you take it? That can really blow out, can't it?
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Look, I think a lot of investors and developers are either individuals, high net worth individuals, or people that want to do a project, so they need to get a builder. But also, there's a lot of developers out there that are smaller builders.
Yeah.
Like, do you find working with a smaller builder, like, a lot of them don't have the time to do detailed, estimates? Are you finding that you're getting a lot more smaller builders wanting to engage your services?
Definitely. I think it's small building companies, they don't tend to usually have a estimating team. They have all their project managers or they have the guys on site or whatever it is, and they don't really have a small team of estimators yet. So a lot of the times the builder would typically do his own estimates.
Yep.
And I always encourage them to engage a quantity surveyor or an estimator to do the work, to do that work for them. That way they can focus on site, and all that back end paperwork, calculating the costs. It takes a lot of time, you know.
Yeah.
So I always encourage them to engage someone like myself or an estimator to do that for them. That way, because we have all the resources, we have the software to do it. You know, it's not what it used to be. We're not measuring architectural drawings with a ruler anymore. You know, we're using these softwares that give us a lot of the information. Yeah. It breaks it down. It makes it a lot easier. We can crunch out the work a lot faster as well. You know, yeah.
And I guess for like a smaller developer or someone doing a project a year or one every 2 years or a couple of projects a year, and they're engaging a builder, are you finding that getting that really good QS then enables them to really cross-check the QS against a couple of builders' quotes or tenders? Like, have you found that works really well that way, or?
Yeah. So what happens is like sorry, you got that? Can you ask that question again? So.
So we're like a lot of people out there are smaller developers or smaller investors, but they're doing a couple of projects a year.
Yep.
Do you think it's important to get that QS so that they can cross-check that against, for example, once they get a couple of builders' quotes, just so they can really see if there's a blowout in a couple of builders' quotes?
Okay, yeah. So as in like the investor or the person the developer wants to, Okay, so what happens is, typically they'll go to, a few different builders and they'll go, okay, well, one guy's saying it's $1 million and the other guy's saying it's 1.5, and the third guy's saying it's 2 million. Yeah. And then because the prices varied so much, now the developer has no idea what to do in that position, especially if it's a mum or dad. They've never been in this position before. But then so what we do is we prepare our cost estimate. We itemize everything. We make sure we cover everything in our report, in our detailed cost report, or our forensic report. How many taps, how many doors, how many cubic meters of concreting, how many tonnage of steel reinforcement. Then now we're able to compare apples with apples. This builder here, builder A, he has these exclusions, whereas builder B has included this. Builder C has allowed for this, and this here.
Yeah, and can you nearly and I'm guessing you can nearly catch out where you may have actually been really taken for a ride with some cost blowouts.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I think a lot of my clients, mums and dads particularly, they've been in a position where they're doing an alternate ads on a house. And they're getting price quotes from builders that are so low. Builder A might be like at 600K, and everyone else is sitting around 1.8, 1.9 mil, and they're thinking, or 1.5 mil, they're thinking, why is builder A so much lower? He's basically made an allowance to repaint a wall or replace a wall, but they don't realize what's happening behind the wall. There's all these things, and then they end up charging a variation once they strip that wall down. We need to do this now. We need to do this. We need to do that.
Yes. That's so true, isn't it? And I've even had a live story where a client went with the lowest option.
Yeah.
But once they added up all the variations, all the missing pieces, all the little upsells, all the little things that weren't within the quote, and it was, the tender was very well crafted to protect the builder. In the end, and it was a volume type builder, so the quality of the build was probably not what they expected either. So in the end, they ended up paying not much less than what a couple of the nicest sort of mid-spec builders were actually charging, but their quote was actually a lot more upfront. So that it's not always like the lowest price, I find, is dangerous.
That's right. There's a lot of guys out there doing the right thing. But there are a lot of builders out there that do, tend to come in a bit lower, then end up charging variations that end up stacking up to be a lot higher than,
and I guess
the other options.
By having that detailed QS, I guess you can really highlight, can't you?
Yeah.
Cross-check that QS against the quotes that you get.
Yeah.
And go, okay, well, that one's missing all the council fees, or that one's missing all the contributions, or it's missing parts of the demolition. Like, can people do that? Can they go? Is that the advantage of having a detailed QS?
That's right. Well, look, our job here is not to catch people out, call them out for doing the wrong thing. But let's just say if there's a builder that's come in so much lower, we can give the client a reason. Well, the reason why he's coming in so much lower is because he might not have all the documents to be able to price whatever's behind this wall or whatever's below ground, whereas the guys that are pricing so much higher, they've made an over allowance just in case if this happens, that happens, That's why their contract is a lot higher. So no one's here to say who's right, who's wrong.
No.
But basically our job here is to say, yes, this is why this one's so much lower, and that's the reason why that one's so much higher,
Yeah. And I think you can sort of help the builders in a way. Like, we've seen obviously a number of builders really not be able to survive this turbulent time the last couple of years. And I guess some of those could a lot of it's conditions, but sometimes you can look and you can see some of it can come down to maybe if they had a QS helping them as well, just so that they're not losing any money on a project. They're not sort of doing a project. They're realising, and I've seen this, where builders are losing 100K on a project. And, and that adds up over time. So by having a QS involved from a builder perspective too, it just ensures that you can really pick up on some of those things that may have been missed.
That's
in the
right.
Stage.
It's honestly such a harsh market right now. The industry is in such a harsh market, and it's the margins are so small, and the margin of error is so small as well. You need to sort of spend more money on consultants, the right team, to be able to avoid your project from collapsing.
Definitely. All right. Do you want to? I thought it might be good just to get a bit of a case study on just a successful project, maybe one that was could have really been a disaster, but you're able to really help rescue it early in the piece and see something successful come out of it.
Yeah, of course. So I had a client that came to me and needed just a rough cost guide on his development. It was a duplex, and I helped him. I prepared a preliminary cost report, and he gave me all the specifications. He's going to use this, and this, and then I prepared the preliminary report, and the costs end up being much higher than what he anticipated. And then we were just talking about, he was thinking, oh, maybe I should trim down on some of the options, like, a lower quality finishing in the finishes. So, your taps, your doors, your joinery, plant equipment items as well. But we came up with a solution. We did some value engineering. We said to him, look, instead of using this product here, you should use this product here. It's a lot more cost effective. You can save some time on it as well. And then that gave him the opportunity later on, at a later stage, when he went to towards the tendering stage. We also prepared the detailed cost report. We itemized everything. He was able to, upgrade some of the other options now, rather than downgrading from
That's
them.
great.
Yeah. So that preliminary cost report stage there was so significant, because it just it allowed him to, sorry.
That's right.
So that preliminary cost report section stage was important, because it just helped him save so much money. I think it was close towards 10-15% on his project.
That's massive.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between it being a good project and just a break-even project, I guess, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
No, that's brilliant. And I think for me, that's one of the biggest take-homes of this conversation, is actually the value of actually getting involvement of a QS early in the piece, because anyone doing an investment or a development, you're doing it to obviously generate a profit. You're doing it to create a project that is going to be profitable. And in this volatile market, I just think it's never been more valuable than now to involve that. So
yeah, and I think it's the hardest part of our job, everyone thinks, the preliminary cost report's a one line item page report. But compared to a detailed report, at a detailed report, you have all your specifications, you have everything drawn for you on a set of drawings. All we have to do now is get a click of a button, measure everything up, quantify everything, rate everything. It's not easy, but we can. It's easier because you can. Everything's basically specified for you at that stage. Then you just go as a quantity surveyor. You go out, you call your suppliers, you find all the rates for those items there. So it's quite easy. But at the preliminary stage, you want to help the client save money, save cost. But how do you do that with such limited documentation? So then your sort of your experience kicks in. Like this is you compare it to other projects you've worked on. This is how you can trim costs down because instead of using this item, this material here or this product here, use this product. I find that the preliminary stage is always the hardest.
Definitely. Well, it's been brilliant to have you on. Hopefully, it'll be good to get you on. There's so many topics we can cover around this, and I really appreciate you coming in. And being on this podcast. In terms of for our investors and developers on this podcast, I'm sure off the back of this conversation, people are going to value so much those different types of estimates they can get: the preliminary, the detailed report, the forensic report. And even for builders to be able to really work with them as well. Like for people listening and have just seen the value in what you can bring at the Duo Group, what are some ways people can find you? And obviously we'll be putting all of your details within the show notes, on socials, all that sort of thing as well. But how can people best contact
of course.
you?
So they can find me through my contact details that you'll share. Appreciate it, Nathan. Thank you. And look, what we do is a lot of clients call us and we give free consultation over the phone. How much does it cost for this, or what the cost per square meter for a house, duplex or townhouses or an apartment is in certain areas. We do all of that free over the phone.
Perfect. So if someone's looking for a development site, essentially you guys can just provide a little bit of free advice before they go too far into a project. And then obviously off the back of that, there's some services, paid services you guys can provide. For all the different types of reports.
That's right. It doesn't hurt to ask. It's a free consultation. They can call through any time, and we have a team there that are ready to go.
That's brilliant. Well, it's been good to have you on, Nate.
Thank you so much, Nathan. I appreciate it.
Wonderful.
Great having you.
And look, I hope you've enjoyed this really insightful conversation. Again, just a reminder, all the details for Duo Group are going to be within the show notes. But can I encourage you to really digest this conversation and really, really ensure that you have a good QS as part of your dream team. It's invaluable. It can save you a lot of money and it can also help you, especially in that preliminary side of things, to avoid a disaster early in the piece. So, I hope you've enjoyed this session. Again, find that detail in the show notes. Thanks for listening.